Hello and warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Akhilesh Suman and you are watching special edition of To The Point. And the guest of honor today is Mr. Nadir Patel, Excellency the High Commissioner of Canada. Excellency, welcome.
Thank you very much, Akhilesh. Nice to see you.
There are so many things to talk about between India and Canada. But I'll begin with the question of climate change. Recently the government has changed. And I feel that the standpoint of Canada on climate change also has changed. How do you take this thing?
Well, I think it's a very, very positive reflection of an important issue. We have a new government in Canada, and this government has made it very, very clear that climate change will be and continue to be a very, very top priority of our government. And I think what's important to also recognize is that our government has established its priorities based on consultations, extensive consultations with the Canadian public. And I think what that reflects is the topic of climate change, whether it's here in India, in Canada, or other places around the world, is a very much important issue for Canadians as a whole. And I think we'll see that feature very, very prominently in our government's policy framework going forward.
But there was a time when Canada almost left the Kyoto Protocol table. And now there is time that Canada has come on the multilateral table and now the things have changed. So what made Canada to return on the multilateral table?
Well, I think first of all, the COP21 conference was planned, and it was a great opportunity for Canada to display leadership as well as articulate its important emphasis on the climate change issue. And our government has made it very clear that this issue is going to have multiple facets to it. The idea of ensuring that we base our policy framework as it relates to climate change on the best and sound of scientific advice, scientific positions, ensuring that Canada's positioning is inclusive, includes not only the views of our federal government, Canadians as a whole, but our provinces, our provincial premiers, as well as Indigenous peoples. And if you look at the significant number of Canadians that actually attended the COP21 conference, our Minister of the Environment and Climate Change actually talked about this in her statement. It was a very, very significant reflection of the importance Canada places on this.
What I remember that Canada was very tough on India and also on China. So do you think that now India and China has come to a terms that Canada has accepted it, or it is just because of the change of guard in Canada?
Well, I think our government has also talked about the important role that Canada will play in helping developing economies and the important role of world-leading economies as well. And of course, the relationship with Canada and India is very strong and will continue to get stronger. And Canada views India's role on the climate change stage a very important one where it can play a very significant leadership effort going forward. So having a very strong relationship between our two countries on a number of fronts, including climate change, will certainly help going forward.
But Excellency, you have worked in both economic side, security side, and now you are like a diplomatic corps. So don't you think that the economic considerations that Canada had earlier about emissions from India, and now Canada has articulated in a different way?
Well, I think it's something that needs to be discussed collaboratively across a multilateral stage, and that's why COP21 was a great example of an early opportunity to engage. And the agreement that was struck there as well was a very important step going forward as well. That continues to be something that we will play on going forward and work together on both bilaterally but also multilaterally as well. So I think certainly as you look at economic growth, as you look at new indicators of growth, not only in Canada or in India but around the world, I think the key message here is that it can be done in a responsible way that addresses climate change and environmental issues as well.
So how Canada now expects from India on the question of climate change, on the question of diminishing or decreasing the emissions from India?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like other countries, Canada will expect India to play a very significant leadership role in addressing emissions, about keeping temperature growth below 2%, as has been articulated in the new agreement as well. Working together on new areas of innovation, technology, both which are very much on the Indian government's radar screen as well as Canada, such as renewable energy, among others. I think there are ways in which we can, in fact, leverage what each country has to offer to advance some of these areas for the mutual benefit not only of our countries but broader global climate change.
But how Canada feels that it can help India in achieving those targets?
Well, if you take that example, we are here working together with the Indians on how we can expand new opportunities for clean energy. That's just one example. When we look at renewables, we're doing quite a bit in that world, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's thermal or biothermal as well. You take that and you multiply that to many other initiatives where we can in fact work together, sharing capacity, best practices, or looking at ways in which we can help grow.
So is it a business model for this, or this is a grant and cooperation in this?
I think it's business model and trade investment linkages are a significant way forward in that regard. But then we also have to look at policies, policy frameworks. Our government has talked about new policies on the Canadian side will ensure that climate change is at the forefront of any policy framework going forward. And I think that was also one of the fundamental pillars of our government's climate change approach. And I think that can be done here in India as well.
Excellency, as far as I remember, even before COP21 started, Canada has exported uranium fuel to India. And I think that Canada is one of the countries who has exported uranium very fast, as India had expected. So what is Canada plan? Does Canada plan to go into deeper nuclear cooperation with India, or it is restricted just to uranium supply?
I think the uranium supply arrangement was a very significant one. It was a first tangible result of the nuclear cooperation agreement and the administrative safeguards. And on that, we certainly expect and look forward to broadening the cooperation in the nuclear sector. We had a Canadian delegation of a number of Canadian companies visit here in October to attend the nuclear expo in Mumbai, but they also met with a number of potential Indian partners. Clean energies with respect to nuclear as a clean energy option for India's future is also another area where we can benefit from, both in the climate change front as well.
But do you want to go into transport technology or technological cooperation or exporting the nuclear reactors to India?
I think it could be a combination of all of those. The majority of nuclear reactor technology in India right now is based on Canadian CANDU technology. We're looking at opportunities with respect to pressurized heavy water reactor technology. We're looking at the broader ecosystem of training, capacity building, nuclear waste management. It's the full range of opportunities. Because Canada is a world leader in the nuclear ecosystem, it certainly has the potential to go beyond uranium.
But as far as I remember, after 1974, nuclear cooperation between India and Canada has virtually stopped. But Canada was one of the countries who has helped India in achieving the nuclear technology and working on the nuclear technology. So do you think that what has changed in India that Canada has again come on board with India on nuclear issues?
Well, I think the nuclear cooperation agreement signed in a few years ago was the most significant step forward to relaunch a new era of cooperation in the nuclear collaboration, and the uranium was a good tangible result of that. And looking forward, we see that as an opportunity to grow in a direction that we haven't seen before.
So, Excellency, I think that nuclear energy is one part of the whole clean energy. But what are the other major things that Canada can contribute to India in context of clean energy?
Well, if you take a look at solar as an example, of renewable energy in the solar realm, this is an area that is the Indian government has made significant commitments to.
India has just launched a Solar Alliance, and
Absolutely.
Is Canada part of it?
And Canada
wishing for?
Canada has a number of companies that are active here in India in supporting the Indian government's ambitions around solar energy. If you look at companies...
But is Canada part of International Solar Alliance that India has just launched?
Canada has made a commitment to be part of the growth of the solar sector and the renewable energy sector here in India.
About the Solar Alliance, I'm asking actually.
I think on the Solar Alliance, right now, where Canada is a number of companies, including those that were at COP21, where this was brought forward, participated and worked with their Indian partners. And you'll see that grow. As India focuses on solar, Canada must be part of it because we're one of the leaders in the world in this area.
One of the things that India is making buzz around the whole world, our Prime Minister is going to the countries and asking for contributing in Make in India program, and also Make India program, like create infrastructure in India and then put factories in India, transfer technology in India. How far Canada thinks that it can fit into this program of Prime Minister?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, Canada subscribes to Prime Minister Modi's vision of a Make in India, whereby it's really about revitalizing a manufacturing sector and capitalizing on the labor capacity here as a competitive advantage. And there are a number of Canadian companies that are already active with manufacturing operations here in India. In fact, against the backdrop of Make in India, if you look at, there are 600 Canadian companies doing business in India, of which about 300 of them have a physical presence of some form.
They're in production sector?
A number of them have manufacturing sites in India. Not all of them, but a number of them do. So the Make in India concept is something that Canadian companies have embraced in the past and will continue to going forward. And I think how we leverage the opportunities for growth, that is one of many potential initiatives. Others that the Modi government is promoting, we also are subscribing to and are
Excellency,
trying to support.
there are many countries like yours, whole of Europe is there, America is there. So what leverage Canada can have to do business in India? Do you expect something more from Government of India to do in that sector?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Canada has capacity, Canada has talent, Canada has the latest of innovative technologies around science, technology, and other innovation that is feeding into the manufacturing sector here. With respect to supporting Make in India in the manufacturing sector, Canada is actively involved in education and training and learning, especially around skills development, vocational skills, which are also needed to support companies that are manufacturing and supporting the Make in India campaign. In addition to that, there's significant investment capital in Canada. A number of Canada's largest investors, such as pension funds and other institutional investors, are very active here. And capital is needed not only to promote greater engagement in Make in India, but also manufacturing, infrastructure, right, and India's growth. So there's quite a bit along those lines that is supporting and mutually reinforcing.
It's really interesting. I'll try to understand it later also, but this is time for a break. After the break, we will meet again. Welcome back to the special edition of To The Point. And the guest of honor is Mr. Nadir Patel, Excellency the High Commissioner of Canada. Excellency, we were talking about trade and business between India and Canada. But tell us precisely what Canada expects from India so that India can achieve successfully Make in India and Make India programs.
I think Canadian companies are active here in India, and Indian companies are active in Canada as well. And I think, first of all, it takes bold vision and big ideas, and that the Modi government has very much described, whether it's Make in India, Skilling India, Digital India, whatever it might be. This is all very important for Canadian companies because it sets the foundation of opportunities.
What Government of India should do more so that Canadian companies can come easily and do business here?
So I think there's a few things. First of all, I think on the ease of doing business. I think there have been significant strides and improvements over the last little while, but much more work needs to be done in that regard. We're very pleased to see that the OECD's ranking of ease of doing business around the world, India actually jumped up quite a number of points. And this was very significant because not only did it stop a downward trend, it actually reversed and it became easier to do business in India. That said, the ranking is still over 100.
So what do you mean by ease of business? Can you cite some example that India should do?
Administrative burden. When I talk to some Canadian companies, there are multiple levels of approvals, multiple levels of paperwork that need to be done for some very simple transactions. That's one example. And I think that is multiplied by other examples as well. So if you look at the fact that the trend is moving in the right direction, that's a very positive thing. But much more work needs to be done because the ranking is still far away from where it would be in, say, Canada or other places where it is easier to do business.
But Excellency, Canada is a democracy. India is the largest democracy in the world. So don't you think that the administrative system here in India might be the same in Canada, or there is a difference in decision-making process under administration?
Well, it's not so much decision-making process. It's just when you have a large administration, large bureaucracy, and many, many people and many issues, it's not as easy to move things as rapidly as you would otherwise like to be able to do.
It's natural, or it's some policy problem?
No, I think it's a combination of a couple of things. First of all, just size. I mean, the bigger you are, the tougher it is to move quickly. But as long as there's movement in the right direction, and we believe there is, that in itself is a reason enough to be confident in India, and that's what Canadian companies are. Secondly, if you look at bridging the gap between the large vision, the big ideas, and the public policy capacity and the movement to move in that direction, that's very, very important. So what we'll see over time is greater knowledge, greater integration with other countries in helping move the policy frameworks to achieve that vision. And this is something that we really would like to see happen a lot more. But I think it's moving in the right direction, which is why Canada and Canadian companies remain optimistic about investing or doing business in or with India.
But many of the countries are wanting that there is a problem in tax structure. They also want that level playing field for both Indian and the foreign companies. So do you feel the same?
Absolutely. I think a level playing field is important. I think a predictable and stable tax structure is very, very important. I think to ensure the right safeguards and dispute mechanisms are in place are very, very important. And we're not there across the board here in India. However, if you start looking at some of the initiatives that are taking place, the ideas, the policy frameworks, things are moving in the right direction. And that, I think, is the key point. Work to be done, but there's not only a genuine interest, there's slow progress. And as long as there's progress, Canada and Canadian companies will be very supportive of doing business here.
Excellency, you are well conversant with India and Canada. So do you think that land is a problem in India to invest money in India or invest capital or technology in India, or there is something else?
I think Canadian investors, large institutional investors in particular, are looking at various investment opportunities. It could be direct investment in companies doing business. With respect to broader, whether it's land or broader initiatives, the focus primarily would be areas such as infrastructure. And when you talk about, Prime Minister Modi and traveling around the world, I think one of the things that's very important is that India's growth can happen easier and quicker with foreign partners and investors, especially in areas like infrastructure, utilities, large-scale investment opportunities.
So when you talk about infrastructure, I think that Canada is also very good in infrastructure sector. So do you think that Canada also wants to invest in infrastructure, and on what terms?
Yes, not only does Canada want to invest in infrastructure, or Canadian investors, they are investing in infrastructure. So if you look at examples of large roads, toll operations, airport development, rail system development, we're feeding into that right now already because Canada has a lot of capacity in that regard.
But is it profitable to Canada?
If the opportunities are there, then absolutely. And our Canadian investors do significant due diligence. We'll make sure that the return opportunities are there. And the reason why a lot of them do feel it is there is because infrastructure typically has a long-term life cycle. Yeah. And Canada's institutional investors typically look at parking capital for the long term. We're not talking about short term, we're looking at long-term opportunities. And on the long-term horizon, these investment opportunities combined with the trend line of movement in the right direction around policies and changes bode very, very well for not only the future of India, but also the returns that investors have.
I mean, it is a government-to-government contract. Government gives loan, Canada government will give loan and India will repay it. But when it comes to the private sector, how will private sector gain from it after they make or they create some infrastructure?
Well, our pension funds operate on private sector principles, as do as does our export development and credit agency as well. They won't enter into agreements or engagements if they weren't based on commercial premises as well as an opportunity to generate returns.
They will collect toll tax like that, entry tax?
If it's an investment in a toll road, then the revenues generated would be part of the projections for a return on that investment. And if the returns were not projected, they wouldn't make the investment. In other words, we wouldn't be looking, I wouldn't advise Canadian investors to invest if the returns weren't there. That's the bottom line. But the truth is the opportunities for returns are there in India. And I think the key is to find them, and a number of our investors are actually succeeding in that regard.
And you have a large pension fund, and I think that when Prime Minister Modi was there in Canada, there were some deliberations and some understanding on the investment of those pension funds. What has been progress on that?
So first of all, there are several pension funds in Canada, many of whom have interacted with Prime Minister Modi's government. We have just under $1 trillion of pension fund money, and that doesn't include other institutional investors who are active here in India as well.
So are you feeling any problem in investing those funds?
Well, if you look at the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, which is our largest pension fund in Canada, they just opened an office in Mumbai about a month and a half, 2 months ago. A number of other pension funds have been in India very recently exploring opportunities and many of them are actually invested here or have committed funds here. So, and if they're the ones who are making their decisions based on commercial opportunities and returns, that in itself shows that the opportunities are here, and we're fully supportive.
Any suggestion from your side so that pension fund can come easily to India?
Well, I think some of the work the government is already doing around tax predictability, around dispute resolution mechanisms, I think is very important. We would also very much like to conclude a foreign investment protection agreement with India, and that's something that we would certainly hope that would happen down the road. But when you look at mixing some of this with the vision that the government has and the reforms that are slowly taking effect, I think that's very important. Also, some of the investment liberalization rules. I know if you look at the insurance sector, one of Canada's largest insurance companies just increased a significant investment here as the rules were relaxed a little bit around limitations on foreign investment. Same thing in the rail sector as well. So I think some of this is moving in the right direction. We'd like to see more of that.
US Federal Reserve has just increased its interest rate. So do you think that your pension fund will still be coming to India rather than going to US?
So our pension funds have made it very clear that India is a very significant market of interest to them, partly because they want to continue to diversify their portfolios. We will always look at investing in places like the US, like Europe, or some of our traditional markets. But as far as emerging market opportunities go, or as far as new markets goes, India is near the top of the list of most of our investors because of what's happening here and what the opportunities are long term.
So, Excellency, you are from the Indian origin, and India is the second largest population in the world, and Canada is the second largest geography in the world. So, do you think that India and Canada can collaborate on these two qualities that both the countries do have?
You know, I often say in different remarks that India and Canada can do more together as partners than they can individually as countries. And that premise applies right across the board, whether it's businesses working together, an Indian company or a Canadian company, whether it's governments working together, sharing best practices, but also people-to-people linkages. Yes, we have 1.2 million Canadians of Indian origin in Canada, which is significant. It's over 3% of our population. And these individuals play a very significant role, just like me, as ambassadors of the relationship.
When you talk about people-to-people contact, Indians feel that what is the immigration conditions of Canada? What type of Indian people can go to Canada easily? So what is your take on this?
So India is one of, if not the single largest source of immigration to Canada. And that's because there are opportunities back and forth.
What type of people you want from India to go to Canada?
It evolves over time. It depends on what the skills or gaps that we have in Canada are with respect to the workforce. It could be business entrepreneurs, it could be professionals, it could be certain skilled trades that we have a shortage in, and that changes over time. We've also introduced quite a few new opportunities that Indians have taken advantage of, something called the Express Entry Program, where you can apply, showcase what skills you've got, and as soon as those needs become available, we can guarantee bringing you in as a permanent residence very, very quickly. We've launched a startup visa program as well for Indian entrepreneurs who have a business idea that can go off the ground using potential for venture capital funds from Canada. So we're being a little bit more innovative like this as well. And if you look at the fact that we have over 50,000 students from India studying in Canada, this is also an opportunity where we can promote greater linkages as well.
So at a time when UK is almost tightening its visa conditions, US is already, I think, India exceeds the quota. So how Canada feels? Canada wants to consolidate on the same immigration, or Canada wants to diversify more on the question of immigration?
Well, I won't speak about the other countries, but what I can say is that Canada recognizes that immigration is a very important part of Canada's future in the context of supporting the needs of the workforce, supporting Canada's growth. Moreover, Canada is very much known for being a multicultural society, one that's very diverse and leverages that diversity. And our government has made it very clear that leveraging diversity of Canada is a huge asset. So India will continue to feature very prominently on the immigration front, and immigration will continue to flourish from India, there's no doubt about that.
When I'm talking to Excellency, the High Commissioner of Canada, should I tell Indians that Indians will not have any problem in going to Canada if they are eligible for?
What I would say is we encourage Indians to apply to visit Canada, to study in Canada, and to consider becoming permanent residents of Canada. And we have no doubt, again, that we can do more together when we look at capitalizing on the two-way movement of people, and immigration is one way of doing that.
My last question, Excellency. India and Canada has been working on the question of terrorism. And terrorism is one of the major questions that India has been talking to many countries that come on board and go to UN for comprehensive convention on terrorism. Do you think that India and Canada are cooperating, or they can cooperate more on the question of terrorism?
I think this is a very important area of interest and focus for our government. We, of course, are concerned about any types of terrorist incidents or acts. And even in Canada, we're not immune from these types of situations. We're facing similar issues as are other countries around the world. On the topic of cooperation, Canada cooperates and has had a long-standing history of cooperation with India on anti-terrorism initiatives, on counter-terrorism, and we will continue that. We have some very good dialogue at the highest levels of government.
Is it going to depend more in the coming days so that India doesn't feel that Canada is not cooperating on the question of terrorism, or Canada is ignoring the question of terrorism?
Well, I don't believe Canada is, nor have I heard India feel that way as well. So if anything, the cooperation that's taking place at high levels, both within and outside of the administration, I think will continue, and I think we're always looking at ways in which we can further improve that collaboration, not only bilaterally but multilaterally as well, because we have a mutual interest and shared objectives in combating, denouncing and countering terrorism.
Thank you, Excellency, so much, and I think that India as Canada are going to see better future than it was earlier. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akhilesh. Thank you very much.